a very good evening to you. And welcome along to another Sweet and Swing here on Max Radio. My name's Howard Kane. Always a pleasure to greet you along to the show on a Friday evening. What have we got? How about spending an afternoon with a Bassieite, Lester Young? More of our great trumpeters of jazz. The wonderful Marion McPartland and her trio. Some jazz piano. Speaking of which, is that a cat I see on the piano? As good a way to get going as any. It wasn't a cat so much as a kitten. Yes, a kitten on the keys. Of course, Jez Comfrey's famous track. Played there by Sid Phillips and his band from an album simply called Hors d'oeuvres, which perhaps the most famous track that Sid ever recorded. How many times do we say this in Sweden? Swing, what an amazing life in many ways. Grew up in the East End with 3 brothers and 4 sisters. Yeah, you can do the maths yourself. While still at school, he and his elder brothers, Harry, who played the trumpet, and Ralph, who played the banjo, taught themselves music and used to practice their instruments at the end of their garden because their mother would chase them out of the house when she made what she called all that noise. wasn't a great jazz fan, was Mrs. Phillips Sr. However, the neighbours rather liked the noise unusually, and it's reported that dozens of them would stand out into the street outside the bottom of the garden, the bottom of the Phillips garden, listening and tapping their feet and clapping. So it's claimed. Not throwing tomatoes or booing, but enjoying the music. And such was the start, or so rumour or legend has it, of the Riviera 5. And it was with the Riviera 5, which was augmented in the early 1920s by Sid Krieger at the piano and Joe Badas at the drums, that Sid first went on tour around the continent. And then they renamed themselves the Melodians and became pretty popular, good favourites in quite a few fashionable cities around Europe at the time. And then, as I say, Clarinet Cadenza was one of Sid's, and of course Hors d'oeuvre, David Koehler's Hors d'oeuvre became a post-war 70-80 RPM, the first, I think, post-war 78 RPM to be awarded a golden record for selling 1 million copies. 1,078,000 wasn't that way, about 1,000 tons, I would have thought. No, must be more than that. A lot, in any case. I wonder how many of the originals are still knocking around. They were a bit fragile, the old shellac, weren't they? And whilst he was famous for the clarinet, of course, he also loved playing the piano and played Kitten on the Keys, as he did there, sometimes during a concert. He was also, when he wasn't playing or on the bandstand, an accomplished boxer. East End, I suppose. You sort of fought your corner. And, just in order to show a bit of extra culture as well, he was fluent in several European languages. Show off. And after the Second World War, he spent that in the Intelligence Corps in the RAF. He went on to form his Dixieland Jazz Band, which became a great favourite with Princess Margaret. She of the Fags, if memory serves correct. Bless her. Well, I hope you are all coping as best we can as we head through winter. Spring's on the way, lots of snowdrops out, certainly in my garden out at Cronky. The odd crocus. I believe there are daffodils out in flower. Not in flower at Cronkyvoddy, but they are in flower in other parts of the island, I'm assured. We're a little bit late, a little bit slow in Cronkyvoddy sometimes. But it's a sure sign that spring is on the way, which is always nice to hear, isn't it? I think the older we get, the more we start craving the spring and the warmth, and the less we enjoy perhaps the colder times of the year. I don't know. That's a great generalism, it has to be said. How long has it been going on? Asks Peggy Lee. Well, the winter, several months. This programme, about 7 minutes and 40 seconds.
heaven's sake, how long has this been going
And that, as they say, is how you do that. Red Norvo. Before that, Peggy Lee. Beautiful rendition. I enjoyed that very much. Just You, Just Me. You forget what a great voice Peggy Lee had. It was really round and sultry and very, very sort of melodic, gorgeous voice. And you don't hear her as often as you hear sort of Sarah Vaughan more often and Ella and Billy. But I don't know, Peggy Lee never seems to get played quite as much. Maybe that's just me. Perhaps I'm not listening to the right music. But she doesn't seem to be featured as oft as she ought. Maybe we'll try and put that right here. Lovely voice anyway, I really enjoyed that. And then after that, Red Norvo, born Kenneth Norville, but yes, was always known as Red Norvo, an American musician, of course, one of the very early vibraphonists. It's always difficult to say that, isn't it? A vibraphonist, known as Mr. Swing, and he sort of helped establish that sort of tuned percussion, the vibes, of course, really associated with jazz, then with George Shearing and such later on. Xylophone, the marimba, the lovely wooden sound, lovely hollow wooden sound of the marimba, which you hear in quite a lot of modern music now. And the vibes as jazz instruments. I think Red was instrumental in doing that in many ways, if you'll excuse the pun. And things like Dance of the Octopus and Bughausen and Knocking on Wood, Congo Blues became really very popular. Red himself started out in Chicago, the Windy City, lovely place if you've never been, with a band called the Collegians. And in 1925 he played with lots of other bands, including an all-marimba band on the vaudeville circuit. That would have been, can you imagine, an all-marimba band in it sounds so modern, that's the sort of thing you can imagine Evelyn Glennie or one of the minimalist composers, Steve Reich or something, doing an all-marimba band. But no, Red was there first, and he was there at least half a century beforehand, 1925, an all-marimba band on the vaudeville circuit. And he also played with the likes of Paul Whiteman and Benny Goodman and Charlie Barnett and Woody Herman, a lot of the greats, of course. And recorded with Mildred Bailey, which, and I must admit, until I was reading a little bit, I didn't realise he was married to Mildred Bailey for quite a few years. Didn't last forever, I'm afraid. 1933 to 1942, if the facts are to be believed. But yeah, not bad. Mr. and Mrs. Swing, they were known at one stage. But yes, another man you just don't hear a lot about these days, Red Norvo. Now then, another man you don't hear a lot about, which is true for, I suppose, quite a few of the artists on Sweet and Swing. It's one of the raison d'etre for the programme, as well as just playing some great music you don't hear elsewhere. What about Harry Hudson's Melody Men? I am almost certain that they are not on the Manx Radio playlist computer, but we've got them here. loving the crackle from that transcription from the original 78. Harry Hudson died in 1969, so I was just a wee nipper, as they say. But very popular back in the day, that recording from around about just trying to see if they got the date on that one, 1920s or thereabouts. Hasn't got the exact date, I don't think. Suffice to say that he was very popular in his time. I might be lying if there could be an exact date here. Yes, there is. Look at this. It's Melody Men, Edison Bell, recorded October of 1928. Heaven for Two with Harry Hudson's Melody Men, with Harry himself taking the vocals under his own name, which was unusual because over the years he was active, he released more than 20 different named records, 20 pseudonyms in other words, on different labels. Whether it was contractual or just like to keep people guessing, I do not know. Probably contractual. They were pretty sharp on those things back in the day. But here he is, recording as a director and vocalist under his own name. And in later years, he went on to become well known as the pianist for Wilfred Pickles. Now there's a name. Remember Wilfred Pickles and his radio show Have a Go? And if you do, well, it was Harry who was at the keyboard. Now then, you can get your slippers on this one. Bit of Lester Young coming up. Tickletoe. That could be a cue to go and get your slippers. I don't know. Take it away, boys.
I don't blame them, goodness knows. Honeysuckle rose. When you're passing by, flowers droop and sigh, and I know the reason why. You're much sweeter, goodness knows. Honeysuckle rose. Don't buy sugar, you just have to touch my cup. You're my sugar. It's sweet when you stir it up. When I'm taking sips from your tasty lips, seems the honey fairly drips. Your confection, goodness knows. Honeysuckle rose.
Ah, another lovely little twofer there for you. First off, we had the wonderful Lester Young from the Afternoon of a Bassiite. And Lester, yeah, the man in the pork pie hat, of course, with that wonderful tone he had on the tenor, followed by, oh, well, I'm sure you recognise it, Honeysuckle Rose, Jack Simpson and his sextet. And yeah, took a little bit of a battering by Honeysuckle, if I'm honest. I mean, I know we've had two storms of recent weeks, haven't we? And I hope you've survived relatively unscathed. I'm happy to say we have, in the scale of things. You know, the odd tile here and there. The worst thing, though, some trellis, which I know for some time has been held up mostly by ivy and honeysuckle. And the post itself was actually completely rotten at ground level. But sadly, the wind was blowing in such a direction with Storm Iowin. Was it Alwyn or Iowin? I could never pronounce it. That it sort of is now leaning, or at least the whole structure is now leaning in one corner at about 45 degrees. So I'm going to have to do something, which might mean, unfortunately, losing a bit of the old honeysuckle. I don't know about the rose part. I think the roses will be all right, but the honeysuckle, it's tough old stuff, though. It'll come back, I dare say, as will the ivy, but we'll have to do something with that. Yes, Jack Simpson and his sextet with Honeysuckle Rose, with Betty Kent taking the quite light vocals there. And Betty, born Elizabeth Scott Chisholm, which might give you a clue that she was second cousin to the one and only George Chisholm, who again is in that elite band of artists from Sweet and Swing who've actually met. George Chisholm came over certainly on one occasion, I'd imagine probably two or three, although just from memory I could be entirely wrong. Suffice to say, I do remember him staying with us at Music Man Towers. Well, it wasn't at Music Man Towers, it was at the original Music Man homestead down in Ballacomine Avenue. And George, the old maestro, was the secretary of the jazz club at the time. He would organise a lot of the acts and book them and sort them out, all the travel and all the arrangements and things they needed, the instruments and the venue, etc., etc. All the hard work behind the scenes that so many secretaries for so many societies do. Unnoticed, I should say. It's a thankless task being the secretary of an organisation. All the work, none of the glory. But if you're passionate about whatever it is, then you do it anyway. And that was the way with Jim, the old maestro. He would sort it out. And so George Chisholm, he booked and he came over to play for the Manx Jazz Club. And was given the option, I think, of, do you want to stay in a hotel or would you like to come and stay with us, with my wife and I? He said, oh, I'd love to go and stay with your wife and yourself, Jim. And he did. And he liked nothing better, apparently, as I seem to recall from Mum's talk, of scrambled egg on toast. There you go. It wasn't bad on trombone either. Anyway, so Elizabeth Scott Chisholm, Betty Kent, second cousin to George Chisholm, and then went on later to marry Teddy Foster, the band leader. And not only did she become his wife, she became his singer as well. And later on performed with Jack Payne, Lou Prager, Edgar Jackson, and appeared in the 1938 Royal Command performance. If you remember that, a bit before my time, just before the war. It must have been, an interesting one. I don't know. People must have seen the writing on the wall then, I would have thought. But then, sadly, gave up later on a glittering career, as you can gather from that, to devote herself to their adopted daughter. But then she herself suffered bad health, Betty did, and had depression, and ended up very tragically taking her own life at a relatively young age. So a wonderful, glittering career and so much talent, and then sadly it didn't last. And gosh, it's just the way it goes sometimes, life, isn't it? You never know what is around the corner. Carpe diem and all that. Make the most of things, which is what people are always telling me if you get gloomy and whatnot, saying, come on, cheer up, you've got things to be cheerful about. Make the most of things. Be cheerful, be positive. There's always something to smile about, and you never know what's around the corner either. So get on with it, as it were. I don't know if I'm very good at it, but it's all good advice, isn't it? Here's a lovely one. I promised you earlier on, Marion McPartland. She has been on Sweet and Swing once and twice, but not for quite some time. With a wonderful bass player, Brian Torff, who was George Shearing's bass player for quite some time. Jake Hanna at the drums, and a lovely version of the Johnny Mercer song, Emily. Oh, lovely stuff. Marion McPartland at the piano, Brian Torf bass, Jake Hanna at the drums, and Emily, Johnny Mandel melody, popularised, I think, by Johnny Mathis back in the day. Very nice indeed, yeah. Mercer and Mandel on that one. And some very detailed liner notes from Leonard Feather. He starts off, yes, sort of slightly condescending, but he says, writing about Marion McPartland for her entry in the Encyclopedia of Jazz in the 1970s, I observed that she's progressed over the years from a competent but derivative British import to a mature artist of complete self-assurance, an exceptionally lyrical ballad performer, enriching and expanding the harmonic and melodic essence of every theme. It almost sounds like he's damning with faint praise, but she was very, very good indeed. Indeed. A wonderful pianist, as you could gather there as well. And of the tune we just played, he says, and I'm sure you all noticed this, it brings out the delicacy of the McPartland style. Yep, definitely agree with that. Torf playing arco behind her introduction. You'll probably notice that, playing with the bow. As well as soloing in the third chorus, you'd clock that as well. And in case you were checking, and I know you all were, it does start in D and modulates to E flat. But I am just telling my grandmother how to suck eggs by telling you that, I feel certain. We mentioned the trombone earlier on, which made me, I don't know, just thinking about trombone really, and not many better than Mr. Teagarden.
St. James Infirmary. I found my baby there. Oh, stretched out on a long white table. So sweet, so cold, so fair. Oh, let her go, God bless her. Wherever she may be, oh, she can look this whole wide world all over. She'll never find another sweet man like me. Oh, when I die, I want you to dress me in straight glass shoes and a pearl gray hat. Put a $20 gold piece on my watch chain, so the boys will know I died standing pat.
The classic St James Infirmary, of course. Jack Teagarden's Big 8, recorded in December of 1940 in New York. And Jack Corser playing trombone, also taking the vocals as well. Wonderful, just wonderful sound. It always sounds like a great character, a great entertainer, Jack Teagarden, and had quite a life as well. And sadly, again, died very young, died at the age of 58. I think drink might not have been unrelated to that one as well, as it was so often the case with a lot of the jazzers from the 20s and 30s and 40s and around about that period. It is Sweet and Swing with H through with you until the top of the hour. Lovely to have your company as always. Don't forget, of course, drop me a line anytime you like, about anything you like, really, something you like, something you don't like. Certainly any requests of artists you haven't heard for some time, or tracks you might like, or little features you might have an idea of doing, or someone you'd like to hear featured, or indeed just to say hello and that you're listening in somewhere far away, wherever that be. Well, far away from the Isle of Man anyway, so we mean further than Ronnig is what we normally say. So, could be down the south coast of Britain as a good starting point. On the continent, you get an extra point if you're sort of in France or Germany or Portugal or such like. If you're further afield and listening in Russia or America or China or Japan, then let us know by the wonders of the web, of course. Howard Kane at manxradio.com. That's Kane, C-A-I-N-E, and it's all lowercase. And I would certainly drop you a line back to say hello and either feature in the Faraway Club or see if we can feature some of the music you like. If, on the other hand, you really like to put pen to paper, as some people still do, and why not? It's very nice to get a real letter. It's Sweet and Swing, Manx Radio Broadcasting House, Douglas Head, Douglas, in the Isle of Man, which is in the British Isles, of course, if you're not sure and are listening in Japan. And hello if you are. And the postcode is IM15BW. We started our new little mini-series of great jazz trumpeters last week with perhaps the greatest of them all, and certainly the most famous of them all, namely Mr. Louis Armstrong, or Louis Armstrong. Take your pick. Well, we're going to follow. We're not, as I say, doing this in chronological order necessarily. Order. We'll do it in the order of this little collection. And one of Louis' mentors, King Oliver. Here he is with West End Blues. love the hit on the cymbal in the end, that push to finish off. I thought it might have been a Chinese type cymbal quite often, but not. More of a splash sound there. King Oliver, one of Louis Armstrong's mentors, of course, back in New Orleans in the early days. And it was the king himself, King Oliver, who was responsible, really, for getting Louis onto the scene. Without King Oliver, probably no Louis Armstrong. He sent him to join the Creole Jazz Band in Chicago in 1923, launching Louis' career. But by the end of the 20s, as Louis was on the up, of course, King Oliver was beginning to decline, I guess. That recording from 1929, when Oliver would have been 44 years old. And as it says in the notes, suggests how remarkable he must have been at the peak of his power and imagination. Louis learned from a very worthy teacher. He did indeed. Slightly worrying to think he might be on the decline by 44. Doesn't know where that leaves me. Best not to think about it.
I'll keep the love light burning in my heart, so that you can find your way to me. For you, there's such a yearning in my heart. Darling, it will burn eternally. The flame will grow into a fire as bright as any star above. So let the glow of my desire light your way to my love. I'll keep the love light burning in my heart, so that you can find your way to me. The flame will grow into a fire as bright as any star above. So let the glow of my desire light your way to my love. I'll keep the love light burning in my heart, so that you can find your way to me.
Vera Lynn, Sam Brown, the Robert Farnan 8. We'll keep the love light burning here in Sweet and Swing, of course. See you in a couple of weeks. Cheerio.
La 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 la.